Welcome, dear traveler of time, to a journey unlike any other, a voyage deep into the heart of ancient Rome, the Eternal City. As you settle in, perhaps lying comfortably in your bed, or resting with a warm fire flickering softly nearby, allow yourself to be carried away by the whispers of history. Tonight, we leave behind the noise of the modern world and step into the shadows of marble columns, echoing with the footsteps of emperors, senators, and soldiers. Feel the cool night air brush your skin, the scent of olive groves mingling with distant smoke from oil lamps. Imagine the soft murmur of the Tiber flowing quietly under moonlight, while the city's heartbeat throbs beneath stone and mortar. In this moment, the hustle of chariots, the chatter of markets, and the solemn rituals of the temples come alive just for you. Before we embark, I invite you to pause and breathe deeply. Adjust your pillows, draw the covers close, and if you like, light a candle or turn on a gentle fan to feel the breeze of Rome's eternal night. Perhaps the crackle of a fire or the distant tune of a lyre will settle your mind, preparing you for a story that stretches across centuries, a tale of power, ambition, triumph, and tragedy. As we step through the gates of history, know that these are not mere stories of conquest or glory. They are the lives of men who shaped the fate of the world, whose decisions echoed through time and still ripple in the fabric of our civilization. And as you listen, I would love to know, where are you joining me from tonight? What hour does your day find you? Sharing these little moments with me means more than you know. Please leave a comment below, telling me your city, your time, or even what you've done today before settling in for this journey. It's a small way we connect across centuries and continents. If you enjoy these stories and want to travel further with me through time, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. It helps more curious minds find this quiet corner of history. But most importantly, make yourself comfortable, relax, and let the ancient world unfold around you. So, dear listener, open your heart and mind. Let the weight of the past fall softly around you like the dust of ancient ruins. Let your spirit walk beside Julius Caesar, Augustus, and the other great emperors whose stories we will unfold. This is your invitation to rest, to dream, and to journey into the timeless saga of Rome. Let us begin. Julius Caesar, the rise of a legend. The streets of Rome buzz with the vibrant energy of a city at its zenith, yet also teetering on the edge of chaos. Marble temples gleam in the sunlight, crowds gather at the forum, and the scent of fresh bread mingles with the sharp tang of sweat and the dust of unpaved streets. Rome is alive, a city that pulses with power, politics, and passion. Into this world was born Gaius Julius Caesar, in 100 BC, into a patrician family that had known better days but was eager to reclaim its place among Rome's elite. From his earliest years, Caesar was not content with mere survival. He craved greatness, his mind sharp as a gladius, and his ambition a flame that would not be extinguished. Imagine a young Caesar walking the cobbled streets of Rome, his gaze fixed on the Senate House, hearing the heated debates of senators, feeling the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. His education was rigorous: rhetoric, philosophy, law, and military strategy. But it was in the crucible of Rome's political arena where he would truly be forged. As a man, Caesar was charismatic and ruthless. His silver tongue could sway crowds and senators alike, yet he was no stranger to violence or betrayal. He understood that Rome was not ruled by law alone, but by power wielded deftly, sometimes in shadows. His early career was marked by alliances and enmities. He served as a military officer in Asia and Hispania, learning not only the art of war but the importance of loyalty and spectacle. His victories won him fame and riches, but also enemies who feared his growing influence. Back in Rome, he formed the first triumvirate, a secret alliance with Pompey, the great general, and Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome. Together, they would manipulate the Republic's fragile balance, steering it toward their own ends. But Caesar's ambition would not be contained. His conquest of Gaul expanded Rome's borders and filled his coffers, yet it also made him a figure too powerful for the Senate's comfort. The question loomed, would he submit to the Republic, or shatter it for his own rule? The year 49 BC arrived like a storm. The Senate, led by Caesar's rivals, demanded he disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. But Caesar stood at the Rubicon River, the boundary of his province, with his legions behind him. To cross was to declare war on Rome itself. Alia acta est, the die is cast. With these words, Caesar crossed the Rubicon, igniting a civil war that would change the course of history forever. Feel the tension in the air, the weight of decisions that cannot be undone. Hear the clatter of armor, the murmurs of soldiers, the crackling of fires as Rome prepares for war. Caesar's march on Rome was swift and decisive. Cities fell, alliances broke, and the Republic trembled. Yet Caesar's vision was not merely conquest, it was transformation. He envisioned a Rome unified, reformed, stronger. But with power came enemies. Senators whispered in dark corridors, plotting his downfall. The Ides of March, 44 BC, loomed like a shadow over Caesar's final days, a day that would echo through eternity. As you listen, imagine standing in the Senate chamber, the air thick with tension, daggers hidden beneath togas, voices low but deadly. Julius Caesar's story is one of brilliance and tragedy, ambition and downfall, a man who reached for the stars but was struck down before his time. Let his tale wash over you like the ancient Tiber, powerful, relentless, and eternal. Augustus, the dawn of the empire. The city of Rome had been battered by civil war, its streets stained with the blood of brother against brother. The Republic, once proud and resilient, lay fractured, its foundations trembling beneath the weight of ambition and violence. Yet from this chaos arose a figure whose name would be etched into eternity, Gaius Octavius Durinus, known to history as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Imagine the bustling city under a pale dawn, the chill of morning mist lingering above the Tiber, while merchants prepare their stalls, and citizens rub the sleep from their eyes. But beneath this everyday life, the undercurrents of change stir the very soul of Rome. Octavius was born into the Julio-Claudian family, the great-nephew and adopted son of Julius Caesar. Yet the young man who stepped into Caesar's shoes was far from an obvious heir. Small in stature, scholarly, and at first underestimated, Octavius held within him a quiet strength and an iron will that would alter history's course. Following Caesar's assassination, Rome was plunged into renewed conflict, a fierce struggle for power between Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Octavius himself. The second triumvirate was formed, an uneasy alliance of equals bound by blood and ambition. They set out to avenge Caesar and crush his assassins, driving them into exile or death. The air was thick with tension as armies marched across the Italian peninsula and beyond. Imagine the roar of battlefields, the clash of swords, the thunder of hooves pounding earth soaked with sweat and blood. The future of Rome hung in the balance. Octavius, ever cautious and calculating, proved a master of both war and politics. His forces defeated those loyal to Caesar's killers, most notably Brutus and Cassius at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. Yet victory was only the beginning. The alliance soon fractured, as ambitions clashed. Mark Antony's romance with Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, threatened Rome's stability. The very soul of the Republic, its power and identity, seemed poised to dissolve into foreign influence. Augustus knew that to secure Rome's future, he needed more than military might. He needed legitimacy and the loyalty of the Roman people. His propaganda was subtle but relentless, coins bearing his image, speeches praising peace and prosperity, and careful reforms that restored order while cloaking autocracy in republican guise. Imagine yourself walking through the Forum under Augustus's reign. The noise of haggling merchants and senators debating policy fills the air. Statues and arches dedicated to the restorer of the Republic line the streets. The city breathes a new sense of hope, even as shadows linger beneath its grandeur. His rule marked the beginning of the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and stability that lasted over 2 centuries. Roads stretched farther than ever before, trade flourished, and the arts blossomed. Rome became the beating heart of a vast empire that spanned continents. Yet Augustus was no mere emperor of splendor. He was a shrewd and sometimes ruthless ruler, aware that power must be wielded with both strength and subtlety. He reformed the Senate, reorganized the military, and enacted laws to encourage family values and public morality. His image was carefully crafted as Rome's father, the guardian of its destiny. But even as the empire prospered, Augustus remained vigilant against threats, both external barbarians and internal dissent. His secret police watched the city's shadows. His spies infiltrated rival factions. The emperor's smile could hide steel beneath. Feel the paradox of Augustus's reign, the promise of peace and the presence of quiet fear, the glory of empire and the price paid in shadows and whispered conspiracies. As the sun sets behind the Capitoline Hill, casting long silhouettes over marble temples and crowded insulae, Rome stands transformed. The dream of a republic is fading, replaced by the dawn of empire, a new world ruled by one man's vision. And yet, in the heart of this mighty city, the eternal flame of Rome burns on, ready to illuminate the next chapter in its storied history. Tiberius, the shadowed heir. The dawn of the Roman Empire brought peace, but also new challenges. Challenges of succession, loyalty, and the burdens of absolute power. After Augustus's long and transformative reign, the mantle of emperor passed to his stepson and adopted son, Tiberius Claudius Nero. Tiberius was a man cloaked in contradictions, a skilled military leader, a stern administrator, and a ruler whose reign would be marked by shadows and suspicion. Picture Rome again, the city alive with anticipation and unease. The great marble forums, bustling markets, and ornate villas remain, but behind the scenes, whispers ripple through the streets. The people wonder, who is this new emperor? Can he live up to the legacy of Augustus? The Senate watches cautiously, while factions maneuver for favor in the imperial court. Tiberius was no young man when he took power in 14C. His early years had been shaped by hardship and exile, his relationship with Augustus complex and fraught with tension. Unlike the charismatic and public Augustus, Tiberius preferred seclusion, often retreating from the spotlight to brood in his villa on the island of Capri. His military career, however, was impressive. He expanded the empire's borders with strategic campaigns in Germania and the Balkans, securing Rome's frontiers and consolidating its power. He was a commander who understood discipline, order, and the grim realities of warfare. Imagine the crack of spears, the thunder of legions marching under banners, the dust rising over distant battlefields as Roman soldiers push forward against wild tribes. Yet Tiberius's reign was not merely about conquest. It was also a reign shadowed by paranoia and political intrigue. His distrust of the Senate and the Roman elite grew over time, and his rule became increasingly autocratic. The great halls of power echoed with rumors of spies, secret trials, and executions. Citizens began to fear the reach of the emperor's suspicion. No one was beyond scrutiny. In the heart of the city, the mood shifted. The grand celebrations and festivals of Augustus's era gave way to a more somber tone. The people whispered about the emperor's dark retreats, about his secretive advisors, especially the infamous Sejanus, the ambitious Praetorian prefect whose influence over Tiberius grew dangerously strong. Imagine walking through the shadowed corridors of the Palatine Hill, where power was wielded not only by force but by whispered words and veiled threats. Senators bowed and schemed, nobles courted favor, and the line between loyalty and treason blurred. Tiberius's withdrawal to Capri in 26C left much of the day-to-day governance in the hands of his ministers, but his presence was always felt like a cold shadow looming over Rome. The empire's citizens lived in a mix of awe and apprehension, uncertain whether their ruler was a protector or a tyrant. Despite the fear, Tiberius's rule stabilized the empire after the turbulence of transition. His legal reforms improved the administration of justice, and he maintained the boundaries of the vast Roman territories. But the cost was a city living under a veil of suspicion, where trust was rare and power concentrated. Feel the contrast: the grandeur of Rome's monuments under the golden light of the Mediterranean sun, and the darkness behind palace doors where whispers decide the fate of lives. As night falls, the lamps flicker along the Via Sacra, casting long, uneasy shadows over statues of past gods and heroes. The Republic may be gone, but the empire's heart beats strong, though it now beats with a more cautious, guarded rhythm. Tiberius's reign reminds us that power is a complex burden, one that can illuminate greatness but also cast deep shadows. Caligula, the madness behind the laurel wreath. The Roman Empire, stretching its immense power across continents, was perched precariously at a crossroads. The death of Emperor Tiberius left the city of Rome teetering between relief and apprehension. For years, the people had lived under a ruler whose reign was marked by suspicion, fear, and cold detachment. The Senate had grown cautious, and the citizens had grown weary. Into this fragile moment stepped Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, known affectionately to many as Caligula, a nickname born from the small soldier's boots he wore as a child while accompanying his father's legions. Imagine the city streets in early spring, vibrant and buzzing with anticipation. The sun's soft rays glinted off the marble columns of the temples, and the aroma of fresh bread mingled with the ever-present dust of the bustling markets. Roman citizens from every walk of life, noble senators in their togas, merchants shouting their wares, slaves hurriedly moving about their tasks, paused to hear the news: Caligula had arrived in Rome to claim the throne. His arrival was nothing short of theatrical. Draped in imperial purple, with the laurel wreath resting lightly on his dark curls, Caligula seemed to embody the very spirit of Rome's grandeur. His youthful energy was palpable, his smile charismatic and inviting. For a moment, the collective heart of the city surged with hope. Perhaps this young emperor would bring the golden age the people so desperately craved, a time of prosperity, peace, and renewal. In those first days, Caligula's rule sparkled with promise. He threw grand games in the Circus Maximus, where chariots thundered and the crowds roared in delight. He distributed largesse to the poor, coins that gleamed like sunlight in the palms of grateful citizens. His public appearances were filled with warmth, as he laughed and mingled with the crowds, a ruler beloved by his people. Yet, beneath this radiant facade, a darker story began to unfurl, slowly, like a shadow stretching across the city at dusk. As weeks turned into months, Caligula's temperament shifted from joyous to volatile, from magnanimous to terrifying. His acts of kindness grew erratic, his generosity sporadic and tinged with caprice. The emperor's mind seemed to unravel before the eyes of the empire. Imagine the imperial palace, sprawling across the Palatine Hill, filled with the echoes of whispered plots and hurried footsteps. Caligula's throne room, once a place of ceremony and power, transformed into a stage for his increasingly bizarre behavior. He declared himself a living god, demanding worship from senators and priests alike. His delusions of grandeur knew no bounds. Stories circulated of him ordering his favorite horse, Incitatus, to be made a consul, an insult to the very Senate itself. His cruelty was as sudden as a thunderstorm. Senators who questioned him vanished in the dead of night, victims of secret executions. The Praetorian Guard, sworn to protect him, grew uneasy, their loyalty tested by fear. Caligula's reign was a tempest, swinging wildly between moments of charm and eruptions of madness. The people of Rome, caught between fascination and dread, whispered rumors in the taverns and forums. Tales of midnight feasts where Caligula dined with gladiators, mocking his guests with cruel jests. Accounts of sudden displays of violence, where the emperor's laughter rang hollow in the marble halls. His proclamations became more outlandish, his decrees unpredictable and often dangerous. Despite the turmoil, the city itself endured. The Colosseum, rising majestically against the Roman sky, hosted spectacles that both distracted and entertained. The aqueducts continued to channel water through the city's veins, and the grand temples stood as silent witnesses to the empire's glory and its fragility. But the undercurrent of fear grew stronger with each passing day. Senators met furtively in shadowed corners, plotting the removal of the mad emperor. The Praetorian Guard, once his protectors, now watched him with wary eyes, uncertain when his next fit of rage would fall upon them. Then, in a brutal and swift coup, Caligula's reign came to a violent end. On a chilly January night, the emperor was assassinated by members of his own guard. His blood stained the marble floors of the palace, and with his death, the city exhaled a long, trembling breath. As dawn broke over the Forum Romanum, bathing the city in pale light, the legacy of Caligula remained a haunting lesson. Power, when corrupted by madness and unchecked ambition, could destroy even the mightiest empire from within. The streets of Rome slowly returned to their daily rhythm. The sounds of merchants, senators, slaves, and soldiers once again filled the air. But beneath the surface, the memory of a mad emperor lingered, a shadow in the glorious light of Rome's eternal city. Part 5. Claudius, the scholar on the throne. As the sun rose over Rome after the violent fall of Caligula, the city lay in uneasy silence. The air was thick with uncertainty, fear, and whispered rumors. The empire's heart beat irregularly, shaken by the chaos of the recent days. In the shadowed halls of power, a new figure emerged, one no one had expected to claim the laurel wreath: Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, known simply as Claudius. Claudius was an unlikely emperor. Born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, he had been overlooked and underestimated all his life. His physical appearance, marked by a limp and a slight stammer, had made him an object of ridicule among his own family and the Roman elite. They called him a fool, a weakling, unfit for rule. But beneath his quiet demeanor and scholarly appearance lay a mind sharp as the gladius of a legionary, and a heart forged in the fires of survival. Picture the Roman Senate chamber, a vast semicircle carved from marble, filled with the murmurs of senators debating fiercely. The news of Claudius' ascension rippled through the political elite like a sudden storm. Would this scholar-turned-emperor rise to the challenge? Could a man dismissed by many as insignificant possibly hold the reins of the greatest empire the world had ever seen? Claudius accepted the mantle of power with a calm that belied the turmoil around him. His early days as emperor were marked not by grand spectacles, but by careful governance and quiet reforms. Unlike his predecessor, Claudius sought to stabilize the empire through intellect and measured action rather than spectacle and intimidation. One of his first acts was to extend Roman citizenship, reaching out to provinces and peoples previously excluded from full participation in the empire's civic life. This was not merely a political maneuver but a reflection of his belief in law, order, and inclusivity. He understood that the empire's strength came not only from conquest but from unity, from weaving diverse cultures into the Roman fabric. The streets of Rome began to hum with new energy. Merchants from distant provinces brought exotic goods, silks from the east, spices from Africa, and wine from Gaul. Scholars gathered in the libraries, debating philosophy, science, and law. Claudius himself was a lover of history and literature, often retreating to his study to pore over ancient texts, seeking wisdom from the past to guide his rule. Despite his calm exterior, Claudius was not without challenges. The Senate remained wary, some plotting to undermine him, viewing him as a puppet or a temporary placeholder. Yet Claudius proved resilient. He appointed capable freedmen and trusted advisors who helped manage the vast bureaucracy of Rome. Together, they embarked on ambitious public works. Aqueducts were repaired, roads rebuilt, and new ports constructed, strengthening the empire's infrastructure. One of Claudius' most remarkable achievements was the conquest of Britain. Imagine the dense, mist-covered forests of the island, the clash of Roman legions with fierce Celtic tribes, and the forging of a new frontier at the edge of the known world. Claudius watched the campaigns with a strategist's eye, personally overseeing the administration of newly acquired territories. The Roman eagle was raised over Britannia, a symbol of Rome's relentless expansion. Yet, behind the scenes, the palace was a place of intrigue and subtle power struggles. Claudius' marriages, particularly to Agrippina the Younger, were steeped in political maneuvering. Agrippina, ambitious and cunning, sought to secure her son Nero's future as heir, planting seeds of discord that would later bloom into tragedy. The emperor, though intelligent, was often caught between his love for his family and the harsh realities of imperial politics. Claudius' reign was a tapestry of contrasts: scholar and ruler, gentle reformer and stern commander. 04:08. The city of Rome, with its bustling forums and grand temples, bore witness to a leader who tried to steer the empire toward stability after the storm of madness. As dusk fell over the Palatine Hill, the sounds of the city softened. The flicker of oil lamps illuminated the faces of senators debating new laws, while citizens in the bustling markets bartered under the watchful gaze of statues immortalizing Rome's gods and heroes. The empire was vast, complex, and fragile, yet under Claudius, it found a moment of calm. In the quiet moments, one could almost hear the scholar emperor's whispered prayers, to Fortuna, to Jupiter, to the spirits of Rome's ancestors, hoping that his rule would be remembered not for spectacle or cruelty, but for wisdom and endurance. Nero, the emperor of contrasts. The empire had barely begun to settle under Claudius' steady hand when a new figure burst onto the stage of Roman history, casting a shadow both dazzling and terrifying. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, known simply as Nero, was a man of extremes, a ruler whose name would forever be synonymous with both artistic ambition and catastrophic infamy. Imagine Rome at the dawn of Nero's reign. The city's heart beat wildly beneath the towering marble of the Capitoline Hill, alive with whispers of change. Citizens gathered in crowded forums, eager and anxious, as the young emperor, barely 19, stepped forward beneath a blaze of expectation. The boy who had once been overshadowed by his mother Agrippina's fierce ambitions now held the empire's fate in his hands. Nero's early days were promising. Guided by wise tutors and advisors like Seneca and Burrus, he displayed a surprising mix of charm, intelligence, and generosity. The people of Rome celebrated their young emperor with festivals, games, and grand performances, believing that a new golden age was dawning. But beneath the glittering surface lay a tempest. Nero was a man driven by passion and contradictions. His love for music and theater was as genuine as his ruthless pursuit of power. He delighted in performing before crowds, playing the lyre and singing, a scandalous indulgence for an emperor, and yet one that revealed a deeply personal need for approval and adoration. The city streets echoed with the sounds of celebration and tension alike. Gladiatorial games enthralled the masses, but political intrigue churned in the Senate chambers. Nero's mother Agrippina, once the power behind the throne, found herself locked in a deadly struggle with her son. Their relationship, a tragic dance of love and betrayal, culminated in Agrippina's assassination, a dark turning point in Nero's rule. Perhaps the most infamous chapter of Nero's reign was the Great Fire of Rome, which consumed vast swathes of the city in a fiery tempest. The night skies glowed red, flames licking at the heavens, as panicked citizens fled the devastation. Rumors swirled that Nero himself had ordered the fire to clear space for his grand architectural visions, a massive palace complex known as the Domus Aurea, or Golden House. In the aftermath, Nero's rule grew more autocratic and unpredictable. Senators and rivals disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Conspiracies and purges became daily threats. The arts flourished under his patronage, yet fear permeated the marble halls of power. Nero's contradictions deepened, a ruler who could inspire breathtaking beauty and commit terrible cruelty. Rome itself transformed. The grand new buildings rose from the ashes, adorned with gold leaf and exotic marbles, symbols of imperial extravagance. But beneath the opulence, the people whispered of neglect, famine, and mounting unrest. Provinces chafed under heavy taxation and harsh rule, and whispers of rebellion grew louder. And then there was Nero's fascination with himself. He saw his rule as a divine performance, a stage on which he alone could command the empire's fate. His public appearances were spectacles, his personality larger than life, charismatic yet volatile, adored and feared in equal measure. In quieter moments, one might glimpse a more vulnerable side, a man haunted by insecurities, desperate for approval, torn between the roles of emperor, artist, and mortal. His reign was a storm of light and shadow, a complex legacy that would echo through history as both a cautionary tale and a dark legend. As night fell over Rome, the city's lights flickered against the dark sky. The echoes of Nero's lyre floated through the streets, mingling with the distant cries of those who suffered in silence. The empire's future hung in the balance, caught between the brilliance and the madness of its young ruler. Part 7. The Rise of Vespasian, Restoring an Empire from Ashes. After the tempestuous reign of Nero, Rome stood at a crossroads, its grandeur marred by decadence, rebellion, and chaos. The empire's very soul seemed fractured, its people weary and weary. Into this fractured world stepped a man destined to rebuild and renew, Titus Flavius Vespasianus, known to history simply as Vespasian. Imagine Rome's streets once again. The smell of smoke and ashes still clung to the air, remnants of the Great Fire and years of civil unrest. The Senate's marble halls echoed with uneasy murmurs as factions vied for power. The imperial throne was vacant, an open prize for ambitious generals and politicians alike. Vespasian was not born into the glamour of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. His roots were humble, a man of the provinces, forged in the crucible of military discipline and practical leadership. Unlike the flamboyant Nero, Vespasian embodied the virtues Rome desperately needed: steadfastness, pragmatism, and relentless determination. As commander of the Roman legions in Judea, he had already demonstrated his ability to wield power with iron resolve. The brutal siege of Jerusalem had been a crucible of fire and blood, and Vespasian's success there earned him not only military glory but also the loyalty of his troops. They saw in him a leader who could restore order amidst chaos. Upon Nero's death and the brief turmoil of the Year of the Four Emperors, Vespasian's rise was anything but certain. Yet, through careful strategy, alliances, and an unyielding will, he emerged victorious, claiming the imperial title in 69 AD. His reign marked the beginning of the Flavian dynasty and a new chapter for Rome. What set Vespasian apart was not merely his military prowess but his vision for a restored Rome. He understood that the empire's strength lay not just in conquest but in stability, infrastructure, and the morale of its people. His policies focused on rebuilding the city's shattered heart, repairing aqueducts, temples, and public buildings destroyed during the fires and riots. The Colosseum, then called the Flavian Amphitheater, was Vespasian's boldest project, a monumental gift to the Roman people. Constructed on the grounds of Nero's infamous Golden House, it symbolized a reclaiming of Rome's public space from imperial excess to communal pride. Imagine the crowds gathering, the roar of anticipation, the sand-strewn arena ready to host gladiators, animals, and grand spectacles. Vespasian's reign also brought a renewed focus on fiscal responsibility. The empire's coffers had been drained by Nero's excesses and civil war. Through pragmatic taxation and careful administration, he stabilized the economy, ensuring funds for military campaigns and public works alike. Yet, his leadership was not without controversy. His handling of the Jewish revolt was harsh, culminating in the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, a trauma etched deeply into history and collective memory. The scars of that conflict would echo for centuries, a painful reminder of Rome's relentless expansion. But Vespasian's strength lay in his humility and connection to the people. Unlike many emperors who cloaked themselves in divine majesty, he embraced a more grounded approach. Stories tell of him responding to the news of his accession with the simple phrase, "Vi puto deus fio, alas, I think I am becoming a god." This blend of irony and awareness revealed a man deeply conscious of the burdens of power. His family, too, played crucial roles in his legacy. His sons Titus and Domitian would each leave their mark. Titus as the heroic conqueror of Jerusalem and the benevolent ruler, and Domitian as a more autocratic figure whose rule would be marked by paranoia and fear. As Vespasian aged, his focus remained on securing the empire's future, mentoring his sons, and consolidating the gains of his reign. His death in 79 AD marked the end of a crucial era of reconstruction, but laid the foundations for the empire's continued dominance. Picture Rome at dusk under Vespasian's rule, the city vibrant, the people hopeful, the streets alive with renewed purpose. Statues of gods and heroes gleamed in the fading light. The Colosseum's arches cast long shadows over the bustling forums. The air was filled with the sounds of trade, conversation, and the distant clang of smithies. Vespasian's story is one of resilience, the art of rising from ruins, of balancing power with pragmatism, and of building not just an empire but a legacy that would endure beyond marble and stone. Titus, the soldier emperor and the fire of Rome. As Vespasian's steady hand guided Rome from the abyss of chaos, his elder son Titus prepared to step into the limelight. Titus Flavius Vespasianus was born into a world of turmoil, but was forged in the fires of battle and duty. His story is one of valor, tragedy, and a fleeting reign that would leave an indelible mark on Roman history. Picture young Titus growing up in the shadow of his father's rising star, learning discipline from the legions and leadership from the corridors of power. By the time the Jewish revolt exploded in 66 AD, Titus was already a seasoned commander, tasked with one of the empire's most brutal campaigns. The siege of Jerusalem was a relentless nightmare. Imagine the city walls surrounded by Roman encampments, the dust thick in the air, the cries of soldiers and civilians mingling in a tragic chorus. Titus orchestrated the assault with ruthless efficiency but also struggled with the human cost. The destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD was a moment etched in sorrow and devastation, a spiritual and cultural wound for the Jewish people, and a testament to Rome's iron will. But Titus's military success elevated his reputation. When Vespasian became emperor, Titus was hailed as the heir apparent, his popularity soaring among soldiers and citizens alike. Yet power brought new challenges. In 79 AD, Titus assumed the throne amid hopes for peace and prosperity. His early reign was marked by generosity. He opened the imperial treasury to aid victims of natural disasters, including the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that buried Pompeii and Herculaneum in ashes. Imagine the horror and chaos as lava and ash darkened the skies, and Titus mobilized resources to support survivors, demonstrating the compassionate side of imperial power. However, Titus's reign was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. Rumors swirled of court intrigues and jealousy, but his genuine popularity made his sudden death in 81 AD a shock to the empire. He was mourned as a benevolent ruler, a soldier who understood the burdens of command, and a son who honored his father's legacy. Despite the brevity of his rule, Titus left behind the Flavian amphitheater, completed under his watch, a monument to Rome's strength and culture. Imagine the roar of the crowds, the clang of gladiatorial combat, the spectacle that brought entertainment and unity to a city still healing from its recent wounds. Titus's story is a poignant chapter in Rome's saga, a reminder that even amidst power and glory, tragedy and humanity intertwine. Domitian, the last Flavian and the shadow of power. Following the death of his brother Titus in 81 AD, Domitian Flavius Caesar Augustus assumed the imperial mantle, becoming the third and final emperor of the Flavian dynasty. Unlike his father Vespasian's steady hand or Titus's fleeting but popular reign, Domitian's rule would be marked by contrasts: power and paranoia, grand ambition and fear, reverence and resentment. Imagine the young Domitian, growing up amidst the grandeur and brutality of imperial Rome. His childhood was shaped by the immense expectations placed upon him, the heavy footsteps of his father and brother looming large. Educated in rhetoric and military discipline, Domitian was groomed for leadership but often overshadowed by the popularity of his elder brother Titus. When the time came for Domitian to rule, the empire was a fragile giant, recovering from recent turmoil, boasting vast territories but simmering with internal tensions. His reign began with cautious optimism. He was only in his early 30s but already experienced as a commander and administrator. Domitian quickly asserted his authority, determined to restore the imperial dignity and stabilize the empire. He embarked on ambitious building projects that reshaped Rome's architectural landscape: the renovation of the Temple of Jupiter, the construction of the enormous Palace of Domitian on the Palatine Hill, and the completion of the Flavian Palace. Picture the marble columns gleaming in the sunlight, statues of gods and emperors watching over the bustling forum, the city buzzing with the energy of construction and renewal. But Domitian was no mere builder. He understood the power of spectacle and control. Under his rule, the games at the Colosseum grew more elaborate, the gladiators more numerous, the crowds ever more fervent. The emperor was the ultimate showman, the supreme gladiator in Rome's grand theater of power. Yet, beneath the surface, a darker story unfolded. Domitian's rule was marked by growing suspicion and harsh measures against perceived enemies. The Senate, traditionally a powerful body, found itself sidelined, its members wary of the emperor's autocratic style. Imagine secret trials, accusations whispered in shadowy corridors, and informants lurking in every corner. The word delator, informer, became synonymous with fear. Domitian's paranoia grew, fueled by betrayals real and imagined. He imposed strict control over the empire's provinces, sent spies to monitor officials, and ruthlessly suppressed dissent. Those who opposed him, real or suspected, were often executed or exiled. His purges left a trail of silenced voices and broken families. Despite this, Domitian was an able administrator. He reformed the taxation system, improved the army's pay and discipline, and secured the empire's borders against Germanic tribes and other threats. His campaigns in Britannia and along the Danube demonstrated his military competence, though he preferred to rule from Rome rather than on the battlefield. Socially and culturally, Domitian sought to revive traditional Roman values. He promoted the worship of Roman gods, encouraged moral legislation against adultery and excess, and supported public works that benefited the city's poor. Yet, his efforts often felt like attempts to control and shape society through fear and propaganda rather than genuine consensus. The emperor's relationship with the Senate worsened over time, culminating in open hostility. Senators feared Domitian's power and resented his bypassing of traditional republican institutions. His reign became a tense balance between displaying imperial majesty and suppressing political opposition. Domitian's later years were marked by increasing isolation. Paranoia and mistrust consumed him, and the palace grew quieter, its halls shadowed by suspicion. Those closest to him lived in fear, uncertain if they would be accused next. In 96 AD, Domitian's reign ended abruptly when he was assassinated in a palace conspiracy. The conspirators, many of them senators and court officials, saw his death as liberation from tyranny. But his memory was condemned by the Senate in a damnatio memoriae, an official erasure of his name and deeds from public records. Yet, history offers a more nuanced view. Domitian's reign, while marred by fear and autocracy, was also a time of order, prosperity, and imperial strength. His building projects shaped Rome's skyline for centuries, and his military reforms secured the empire's frontiers. Reflect on the complexity of power, how ambition can elevate and corrupt, how fear can isolate even the mightiest. Domitian's life is a stark reminder that the line between ruler and tyrant can be perilously thin. Nerva, the emperor of stability and new beginnings. The assassination of Domitian in 96 AD left Rome shaken and uncertain. The shadow of his autocratic reign lingered like a heavy fog, but from the turmoil emerged a leader who would begin to restore balance and hope to the empire, Marcus Cocceius Nerva. Nerva was no warrior emperor, nor a man of grand spectacle. Instead, he was a seasoned senator and administrator, known for his wisdom, restraint, and moderation. Imagine a figure stepping forward into a palace still echoing with the whispers of conspiracy and fear, a man whose presence promised calm after the storm. At the age of 66, Nerva was the oldest man yet to take the throne. His ascent was unconventional, chosen by the Senate rather than the army, a sign that Rome sought peace and stability above all. This was a crucial moment. After decades of dynastic rule and violent upheaval, the empire needed a steady hand. Nerva's first act as emperor was to distance himself from the excesses of Domitian's reign. He revoked the damnatio memoriae against his predecessor, a surprising gesture of respect and reconciliation. This set the tone for his rule, measured, inclusive, and mindful of Rome's institutions. However, Nerva's reign was not without challenges. The army, still loyal to Domitian's memory, was restless and uncertain about the new emperor's ability to lead. The legions stationed along the Danube and Rhine demanded strong military leadership, something Nerva, an older man with limited battlefield experience, struggled to provide. To secure his position and reassure the military, Nerva made a bold decision. He adopted a capable young general, Marcus Ulpius Traianus, as his heir. This act of adoption was revolutionary. It shifted imperial succession away from hereditary birthright toward merit and competence, setting a precedent that would shape the empire for decades. Throughout his brief 2-year reign, Nerva focused on administrative reform and social welfare. He implemented laws to protect the poor and vulnerable, especially orphans and widows, reflecting his concern for justice and compassion. Imagine the streets of Rome beginning to breathe easier as relief programs eased the burdens of the city's most destitute. Nerva also worked to restore the Senate's dignity and authority, inviting senators to participate in governance and curbing the emperor's direct interference in their affairs. The Senate, still wary from Domitian's heavy-handedness, cautiously welcomed this revival of republican ideals. Though his time as emperor was short, Nerva's reign marked a turning point, a shift from tyranny to tolerance, from fear to hope. His choice of Trajan as successor ensured that the empire would be led by a man of military prowess and administrative skill, capable of expanding Rome's frontiers and securing its future. Nerva's legacy lies not in grand conquests or monumental buildings but in his vision of a stable, just, and enduring Rome. He showed that even in the aftermath of chaos, renewal is possible through wisdom, humility, and foresight. As you imagine the corridors of power quieting, the senators debating under flickering torchlight, and the people of Rome looking toward a new dawn, consider this: sometimes, the greatest strength lies in knowing when to step back, to heal, and to prepare for what comes next. The rise of Emperor Claudius. The Roman Empire was shaken by the sudden death of Caligula, a ruler whose reign was marked by cruelty, erratic behavior, and unchecked power. The Senate and the Praetorian Guard found themselves at a crossroads. Who would inherit the mantle of leadership amid such chaos? Into this turmoil stepped Claudius, a man whose rise to power was as unlikely as it was remarkable. Claudius was not the image of a typical Roman emperor. Born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, he was often overlooked due to his physical disabilities and perceived frailty. His limp and stammer made him a figure of ridicule among his family and peers, and yet, behind the awkward exterior lay a sharp mind, a scholar deeply interested in history, law, and governance. As word spread that Claudius had been proclaimed emperor by the Praetorian Guard, many in Rome were skeptical. How could this timid man, who had spent much of his life hidden away in the shadows of his more flamboyant relatives, possibly govern an empire as vast and volatile as Rome? But Claudius surprised everyone. His reign began cautiously but soon revealed a ruler of determination and pragmatism. Understanding the delicate balance of power, he moved carefully to secure his position, cultivating alliances with the Senate and the military. He restored order where there had been chaos, and enacted reforms that would shape the empire for years to come. Claudius was a builder as much as he was a ruler. He undertook vast construction projects, roads, aqueducts, and public buildings that not only improved the infrastructure but also symbolized the stability and prosperity he sought to bring to Rome. The city itself began to transform under his watch, with grand forums and magnificent theaters rising where once there had been only rubble or neglect. Yet, his reign was not without controversy or struggle. Claudius faced conspiracies and plots, including those from within his own family. His marriages, particularly to Agrippina the Younger, were fraught with political intrigue and personal betrayal. Agrippina's ambition to see her son Nero succeed Claudius would cast a long shadow over the later years of his rule. Despite these challenges, Claudius was a man who valued knowledge and governance. He expanded the empire's boundaries, annexing new territories such as Britain, which was a monumental achievement and a testament to his military and diplomatic skills. His written works on history and law, though lost to us now, were reportedly detailed and insightful, reflecting a ruler who saw the importance of documenting and understanding the past to guide the future. Imagine standing in the bustling streets of Rome during Claudius's reign. The city hums with activity, the chatter of merchants, the clatter of carts on cobblestone, the murmur of Senate debates. Statues of the emperor are erected in public squares, while his edicts echo through forums and marketplaces. The smell of fresh stone and timber fills the air, mingling with the scent of food and incense from nearby temples. Claudius's Rome is a city in transition, a blend of ancient tradition and new ambitions. The common people watch with wary hope as their emperor, once dismissed as weak, carves out a legacy of resilience and progress. As we reflect on Claudius's journey, from the overlooked scholar to the architect of empire, consider the paradox of power and perception. His story reminds us that leadership often comes in unexpected forms, and that even those underestimated by history can leave an indelible mark. The ambitions and intrigues of Agrippina the Younger. The story of Emperor Claudius is inseparable from the powerful figure of Agrippina the Younger, a woman whose ambition and cunning would shape the destiny of Rome and its imperial family. Daughter of Germanicus, sister of Caligula, and niece and wife to Claudius, Agrippina was a master of political maneuvering in a world dominated by men and fraught with danger. From her earliest years, Agrippina was no stranger to the harsh realities of power. She witnessed the rise and fall of emperors, the brutal executions of family members, and the precarious balance that kept the imperial throne secure. These experiences honed her determination to not just survive but to thrive, and to place her own son, Nero, on the throne. Agrippina's marriage to Claudius was more than a union of hearts. It was a calculated alliance. She was his fourth wife, and many in Rome viewed her with suspicion, wary of her influence over the emperor. But Agrippina knew how to wield power behind the scenes. She cultivated favor with the Praetorian Guard and key senators, subtly steering Claudius's decisions to align with her ambitions. Her relationship with Claudius was complex, sometimes affectionate, often fraught with tension. Claudius valued Agrippina's counsel but was also wary of her growing influence. Agrippina, for her part, was relentless. She secured the adoption of her son Nero, positioning him above Claudius's biological son Britannicus as heir to the empire. Imagine the imperial palace during this time, a grand labyrinth of marble halls and shadowed corridors where whispered secrets and veiled threats were currency. Agrippina moved through these spaces like a shadow queen, her eyes sharp, her smile disarming. The courtiers and advisors who surrounded her knew better than to cross her path. Her ambitions extended beyond her son's succession. Agrippina was deeply involved in the administration of the empire, influencing appointments, policies, and military campaigns. She was a patron of arts and religion, sponsoring festivals and building temples that reinforced the divine aura around the imperial family. Yet Agrippina's rise was not without enemies. Many resented her assertiveness and suspected her of ruthless tactics, including the alleged poisoning of rivals. Rumors swirled about her involvement in the mysterious death of Claudius himself, a suspicion that would haunt Nero's reign. Despite the controversies, Agrippina's impact on Rome was undeniable. She transformed the role of the empress from a passive consort to a political force, setting a precedent for women in power within the empire. Her story is one of survival, strategy, and the relentless pursuit of legacy. As you envision this period, picture the tension and grandeur of the imperial court, the delicate dance of loyalty and betrayal, the clash of wills beneath gilded ceilings. Agrippina's world was one where a single word or gesture could change the course of history. Her ambition was the flame that fueled Nero's ascent, but it also sowed the seeds of tragedy that would unfold in the years to come. In understanding Agrippina, we glimpse the intricate web of power, family, and destiny that defined Rome's imperial saga. Nero's early years and the rise to power. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, a name destined to echo through the ages, a name heavy with expectation and burdened by the legacy of those who came before him. Born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, he was adopted by Emperor Claudius and became Nero, heir to the most powerful empire the world had ever known. But his path to the throne was neither simple nor assured. From the moment Nero entered the imperial family, the stakes were high. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, had made it her mission to ensure his elevation above Claudius's biological son, Britannicus. Through relentless political maneuvering, strategic alliances, and perhaps darker deeds whispered in the shadows, Agrippina secured Nero's position as the official heir. Nero's youth was marked by an education befitting a future emperor. Tutors schooled him in rhetoric, philosophy, music, and the art of governance. Among them was the Stoic philosopher Seneca, whose teachings emphasized reason, virtue, and self-control. Another key figure was Burrus, the Praetorian prefect, who provided military guidance and acted as a stabilizing force in Nero's early rule. Despite this intellectual foundation, Nero's personality was complex, at times charismatic and artistic, at others impulsive and ruthless. His love of music and theater was well known, a passion considered unbecoming of a ruler by the rigid Roman elite. Yet these interests endeared him to the common people, who saw in Nero a different kind of emperor, one who was more than just a distant figurehead. The death of Claudius marked a turning point. The circumstances remained clouded by suspicion, Was it poison, administered by Agrippina's hand? Whatever the truth, Nero ascended the throne at the tender age of 17. The transition was dramatic. The young emperor quickly asserted his authority but was still guided by the wise hands of Seneca and Burrus, whose influence sought to temper Nero's youthful excesses. The early years of Nero's reign were surprisingly stable and marked by reforms aimed at improving governance and public welfare. He reduced taxes, promoted arts and culture, and sought to present himself as a benefactor of the people. Rome, vast and vibrant, buzzed with anticipation and cautious hope. Yet beneath this polished surface lurked darker currents. Nero's relationship with his mother, once one of alliance and mutual ambition, grew fraught with tension. As Nero matured, he chafed under Agrippina's control, craving independence and asserting his own will with increasing force. The mother-son bond twisted into a deadly rivalry, a struggle for power that would have devastating consequences. Imagine the palatial halls of the Domus Aurea, the golden house Nero would later build, a place of opulence and extravagance where the young emperor held court. Here, the young ruler's tastes and temper were displayed in full, from lavish banquets to theatrical performances, all underscored by the political machinations swirling around him. The story of Nero's rise is a portrait of contradictions, a gifted yet volatile ruler, a patron of the arts and a ruthless politician, a son torn between filial duty and the ruthless pursuit of power. His reign would come to symbolize both the heights and depths of imperial Rome. As you listen, imagine the echoes of lyres and the murmur of senators, the flickering torchlight casting long shadows in marble corridors. This is Rome at a crossroads, teetering between its storied past and an uncertain future shaped by one young man's dreams and demons. The Great Fire of Rome and its aftermath. The summer of 64 AD dawned over Rome with a blistering sun beating down on the city's dense stone and timber structures. The air was thick, heavy with dust and the mingled smells of cooking fires, livestock, and the ever-present smoke from countless hearths. Rome was a living, breathing organism, its streets teeming with merchants, slaves, patricians, and beggars all woven into a complex tapestry of ambition, poverty, and power. It was on a sultry July evening when the first flicker of flame appeared in the crowded shops near the Circus Maximus, where vendors sold everything from fresh produce to precious silks. The fire began innocuously, perhaps a dropped ember, a forgotten candle, or a spark from a smith's forge. But the tinderbox of Rome's overcrowded insulae, wooden balconies, and narrow streets allowed the blaze to leap rapidly from one building to another. As night fell, the fire transformed into a terrifying inferno. The flames roared like a living beast, licking the sky, sending plumes of black smoke twisting high above the city's silhouette. From the distant hills, the glow was visible, a dreadful red beacon that signaled destruction. Panicked citizens stumbled into the streets, their faces illuminated by the hellish light. Women clutched children to their chests, men grabbed bundles of possessions, and slaves fled, some too terrified to look back. Amid this chaos stood Nero, the young emperor. His palace on the Palatine Hill afforded a panoramic view of the city, and from his windows, he saw the orange flames devouring the neighborhoods below. Stories have long painted Nero as a cold-hearted ruler, fiddling or singing as Rome burned. Yet, historical accounts suggest a more nuanced reality. Nero was deeply troubled by the devastation and ordered measures to aid the victims. Despite his efforts, rumors had already taken root. Some whispered that Nero had deliberately set the fire, a sinister plan to clear space for his grand architectural visions, especially the Domus Aurea, his opulent golden house. The nobles and senators, eager to undermine Nero's fragile grip on power, spread tales of his cruelty and indifference. The fire raged for 6 continuous days, engulfing vast swathes of Rome. The wooden structures, built haphazardly and packed tightly together, fueled the destruction. Entire districts vanished beneath collapsing roofs and searing heat. Temples that had stood for centuries crumbled. Marketplaces turned to ash. Homes where generations had lived were reduced to rubble. The Tiber River, normally a symbol of Rome's lifeblood, became shrouded in smoke and despair. When the fire was finally contained, a second outbreak flared again, adding to the misery. By the time the flames were fully extinguished, nearly 2/3 of the city lay in ruins. Tens of thousands were left homeless, wandering the streets in shock, mourning the loss of their possessions, their livelihoods, and sometimes their loved ones. Nero's response was swift but controversial. He opened his private gardens and the Field of Mars to provide refuge for those displaced, personally organizing food distribution to stave off starvation and disease. He launched an ambitious rebuilding program, introducing new urban planning laws designed to prevent such a disaster from recurring. Wider streets to act as fire breaks, buildings constructed with brick and stone rather than wood, and height limits to prevent the insulae from becoming death traps. However, the political fallout was intense. To deflect accusations and quell unrest, Nero needed a scapegoat. His gaze fell upon the Christians, a relatively small, secretive group practicing a faith alien to most Romans. Accused of setting the fire to undermine Roman society, they became targets of brutal persecution. This marked one of the earliest and harshest waves of Christian martyrdom, an event remembered for centuries as a dark chapter in Roman history. But the Great Fire did more than just reshape the city's physical landscape. It altered the very soul of Rome. It exposed the fragility of the empire's capital and the volatile relationship between ruler and ruled. It illuminated Nero's paradoxical nature, a man capable of both monstrous cruelty and genuine concern. Imagine walking through the ruined streets days after the fire. The air still thick with smoke and the smell of burnt wood. Ashes drift gently on the breeze, settling on the broken statues and shattered pottery. Survivors sift through the rubble, searching desperately for anything salvaged. The cries of grieving families fill the air, mingling with the clamor of laborers beginning the Herculean task of rebuilding. In the midst of this devastation, Nero walked among his people. He was a man caught in the storm of his own making, battling public fury while trying to restore order. His ambitious projects, once seen as vanity, now promised a new Rome, grander, safer, more glorious than ever before. Yet, the scars remained, visible and invisible. For the people who had lost everything, trust in the emperor was fragile. The memory of fire lingered like a shadow over the empire, a reminder of both destruction and renewal. The Great Fire of Rome stands as a testament not only to the dangers of urban life in antiquity, but also to the resilience of a city and its people. From ashes they would rebuild, but the flames forever marked the reign of Nero and the history of Rome itself. The rise of Vespasian and the Flavian dynasty. The ashes of Rome's great fire had barely settled when the empire found itself once again at a crossroads. Nero's reign, marked by extravagance, turmoil, and now disaster, was crumbling under the weight of rebellion and discontent. The year was 68 AD, a year that would come to be known as the Year of the Four Emperors. Political chaos swept across the empire like a violent storm. And from this storm would rise a leader destined to bring order, Vespasian. Titus Flavius Vespasianus, known simply as Vespasian, was no mere aristocrat basking in inherited power. Born in a modest family from the Italian countryside, he had carved his path through military skill, discipline, and an unyielding sense of pragmatism. Unlike Nero's indulgent excesses, Vespasian embodied the virtues Rome once revered: strength, loyalty, and an unwavering focus on the empire's survival. As Nero's regime collapsed amid uprisings and mutiny, Vespasian's legions in Judea were engaged in brutal warfare, attempting to suppress a Jewish revolt that threatened Rome's control in the east. His command was not only military but also deeply political. His success or failure would decide the fate of the empire. When news of Nero's death reached him, Vespasian declared his claim to the throne, rallying support from the Senate and the armies. Rome itself was a city weary of upheaval. The streets echoed with whispers of uncertain futures, the scars of fire still visible on stone and flesh. Citizens, nobles, and soldiers alike longed for stability, for a ruler who could restore the fractured empire. Vespasian, with his practical approach and steady hand, promised exactly that. He entered Rome not with grand parades or blinding displays of wealth, but with a deliberate calm that spoke of a new era. His first acts were focused on healing, rebuilding infrastructure, restoring the treasury drained by Nero's extravagance, and reinstating discipline among the Senate and military. He understood that Rome's strength depended on unity and order. Yet Vespasian was more than just a restorer. His vision for Rome was ambitious but grounded. He initiated massive public works projects that not only repaired the damage from the fire but also improved the city's defenses and amenities. Roads were rebuilt, aqueducts restored, and the iconic Flavian amphitheater, the Colosseum, was commissioned, a grand arena where the people could gather to witness the might and spectacle of Rome. But Vespasian's reign was not without its challenges. The empire was vast and diverse, rife with factions and unrest. The memory of civil war still haunted the provinces, and the Jewish revolt in Judea was far from over. Vespasian's leadership was tested repeatedly, his decisions measured carefully between mercy and authority. Imagine standing in the forum under the shadow of marble columns, feeling the pulse of a city in transition. You see Vespasian walking among his people, not as a distant emperor but as a man of the people, aware of their suffering and hopes. His eyes reflect the weight of responsibility, but also the determination to guide Rome back to greatness. His dynasty, the Flavians, would endure for decades, leaving a lasting imprint on Roman architecture, military tradition, and governance. Vespasian's story is one of resilience, the rise of a leader forged in the crucible of conflict and calamity, who seized the moment to redefine an empire. As the city of Rome slowly healed, so too did its spirit. The fire that once threatened to consume it became a catalyst for renewal, and from its ruins rose the promise of a stronger, united Rome under Vespasian's steady rule. Titus, the son who inherited glory and tragedy. The Flavian dynasty's strength was not only in Vespasian himself but also in his sons, Titus and Domitian, who had played pivotal roles in the empire's unfolding saga. Titus Flavius Vespasianus, the elder son, was a man shaped by warfare and responsibility from an early age, groomed carefully to follow his father's path and uphold the family legacy. Born in AD 39, Titus was no stranger to the brutal realities of the Roman world. He fought alongside his father during the Jewish War, demonstrating tactical brilliance and unshakable courage. The siege of Jerusalem in AD 70, a monumental and tragic chapter, became Titus's defining moment. The city's ancient walls crumbled under relentless Roman assault, and the temple, sacred to the Jewish people, was engulfed in flames, an event that echoed through history as both a military triumph and a cultural catastrophe. Imagine standing just beyond the dust-choked air of that besieged city. The cries of battle mixing with prayers and laments. Titus, commanding legions with fierce determination, was a figure both feared and respected. He bore the heavy weight of victory and loss, a conqueror crowned with glory, yet forever shadowed by the ruins of a people's faith. When Vespasian passed away in AD 79, Titus ascended to the throne as emperor, inheriting an empire still in recovery from years of turmoil. His reign, though brief, was marked by an unusual combination of compassion and strength. Unlike many rulers before and after him, Titus was beloved by the Roman people for his generosity, fairness, and willingness to aid those in distress. Shortly after his accession, disaster struck once more, the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. The volcano unleashed a fury that buried the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum beneath layers of ash and pumice, freezing them in time for millennia. Titus responded swiftly, organizing relief efforts and providing financial aid to the victims, showing a deep sense of responsibility for his subjects' welfare. Picture the chaos and terror as the skies darkened with volcanic ash, families fleeing in panic, and the landscape transformed into a hellish vision. Titus, far from the erupting mountain yet moved profoundly, was a ruler who understood the fragility of life and the urgent need for leadership in crisis. His reign also saw the completion of the Colosseum, a grand amphitheater begun under Vespasian's command. The inaugural games held under Titus's watch were spectacular displays of Roman culture and power. Gladiators, wild beasts, and theatrical performances enthralled the citizens. The Colosseum was more than just a building. It was a symbol of Roman grandeur and the Flavian legacy. Yet Titus's time as emperor was short-lived. In AD 81, just 2 years after his rise, he died suddenly, possibly from illness. His passing plunged Rome into mourning, the city's streets filled with sorrow for a leader remembered not for tyranny but for benevolence. Standing at the Forum during those days of grief, one would have seen a city united in loss, honoring a ruler who had balanced strength and kindness in a turbulent age. His memory became a beacon for future emperors, a reminder that leadership could be as much about empathy as it was about power. Titus's story is one of triumph shadowed by tragedy, a fleeting reign that left an indelible mark on Rome's history and the hearts of its people. Domitian, the emperor of contrasts and shadows. Following the sudden death of his elder brother Titus, Domitian, the younger son of Vespasian, rose to the imperial throne in AD 81. His accession marked a new chapter in the Flavian dynasty, one fraught with tension, ambition, and complexity. Domitian was a man of sharp contrasts, both feared and respected, loved by some and hated by many. His reign would last nearly 2 decades, shaping the Roman Empire's destiny in ways that echoed long after his fall. Domitian was born in AD 51, growing up in the shadow of his older brother and the rising ambitions of his family. From an early age, he exhibited a strong will and fierce determination. Unlike Titus, whose charm and generosity won the hearts of Rome, Domitian's personality was more severe, his temper quick and unforgiving. Yet beneath the surface of a stern ruler lay a shrewd mind and an intense desire to restore and expand the empire's glory. As emperor, Domitian took on the role of a true autocrat, centralizing power with an iron grip. He declared himself Dominus et Deus, Lord and God, a title that shocked many Romans accustomed to a more modest imperial image. This assertion of absolute authority alienated the Senate, whose members felt increasingly marginalized by his rule. Political intrigue and purges became common as Domitian sought to secure his position, eliminating perceived enemies and dissenters with ruthless efficiency. But to judge Domitian solely by the harshness of his rule would be incomplete. He was also a tireless administrator and reformer, keenly aware of Rome's needs. He invested heavily in the empire's infrastructure, building roads, aqueducts, and public works that improved daily life for many citizens. His efforts to strengthen the military were equally significant, fortifying the empire's borders against external threats and launching campaigns to subdue rebellious provinces. One of the defining challenges of Domitian's reign was managing the volatile frontiers, particularly along the Rhine and Danube rivers. Barbarian tribes, sensing Rome's occasional weaknesses, frequently tested the empire's defenses. Domitian responded with strategic deployments, reinforcing legions and commissioning new fortresses. The soldiers admired him for his presence on the battlefield and his genuine concern for their welfare, though this military vigor sometimes clashed with the aristocracy's disdain for his autocratic style. Domitian's relationship with culture and religion was also complex. He promoted traditional Roman religious practices and revived temples, presenting himself as the guardian of Rome's moral and spiritual fabric. However, his insistence on deifying himself and demanding public displays of loyalty stirred resentment and suspicion. Rumors of tyranny, paranoia, and even cruelty swirled around the emperor's court, casting a long shadow over his legacy. Imagine walking through the bustling streets of Rome under Domitian's rule, grand new monuments rising beside older temples, soldiers marching with disciplined precision, yet whispers of fear and conspiracy floating in taverns and forums. The emperor's image was omnipresent, from statues towering in the forum to coins bearing his stern visage. His presence was impossible to ignore, and equally impossible to fully understand. Domitian's reign came to a violent end in AD 96 when a conspiracy within his own palace led to his assassination. The Senate, relieved and eager to erase the memory of his tyranny, swiftly condemned his name to oblivion, a practice known as damnatio memoriae, meant to erase all traces of his rule. But history, as ever, proved more nuanced. Modern scholars recognize Domitian as a ruler who, despite his flaws, preserved the empire's stability and left a legacy of reform and military strength. His death opened the door to the era of the Five Good Emperors, a time of relative peace and prosperity. Yet Domitian's reign remains a stark reminder of the delicate balance between power and fear, between control and respect. Nerva, the emperor of renewal and hope. The year was AD 96. Rome, the eternal city, stood at a crossroads. The reign of Domitian, marked by suspicion, cruelty, and a tightening grip on power, had ended violently in assassination. The city was scarred, both physically and in the hearts of its people. Fear and mistrust lingered in the air like the ever-present dust rising from the worn cobblestones. The once vibrant streets now whispered with uncertainty. Who would lead Rome forward? Who could heal the wounds inflicted by years of tyranny? Into this fragile void stepped Marcus Cocceius Nerva, a man seemingly unremarkable at first glance, yet destined to become a beacon of hope. He was a man of advanced age, already in his 60s when he assumed the throne, a veteran of the political world, known for his measured temperament and unshakable sense of justice. Nerva was not a warrior emperor, nor a charismatic demagogue. Instead, he embodied wisdom and restraint, qualities the Roman Senate and people desperately yearned for after years of Domitian's harsh rule. Born into a noble but relatively modest senatorial family around AD 30, Nerva's rise was the product of decades of diligent service to the Republic and then the Empire. Unlike emperors who seized power through conquest or violence, Nerva was chosen by the Praetorian Guard as a compromise, a safe pair of hands to steady the ship of state and bring calm after the storm. His reputation for integrity and his long record of public service made him the ideal candidate for this delicate moment. Upon Nerva's ascension, the atmosphere in Rome was electric yet cautious. The Forum was alive with senators tentatively stepping out from the shadows, eager to reclaim influence and restore the dignity of their office. The populace, having endured years of repression, hoped for relief but remained wary of promises yet unfulfilled. One of Nerva's first acts as emperor was symbolic and practical. He reached out to the Senate with genuine respect and invited them to participate in governance once more. This was a stark contrast to the autocratic style of Domitian, who had ruled with an iron fist, often bypassing or threatening the Senate. Nerva sought to heal those deep political rifts, restoring a balance that had long been lost. Yet, Nerva's reign was fraught with challenges. Though beloved by the Senate, the emperor faced immense pressure from the Praetorian Guard, the elite soldiers charged with protecting the emperor but notorious for their political interference. The Guard had played a deadly role in Domitian's assassination and now expected rewards and influence. Their loyalty was fickle, and they soon made their discontent clear, besieging Nerva in the imperial palace, demanding harsh punishment for the conspirators who had killed Domitian. This tense standoff exposed the fragile nature of Nerva's power. Though a man of principle, Nerva was forced to negotiate carefully, balancing the demands of the military with the need to maintain order. His calm and prudent handling of this crisis prevented further bloodshed and rebellion, but it revealed the precarious position any emperor faced in Rome. A reminder that absolute power was as much about managing people's fears and ambitions as it was about issuing decrees. Understanding that his time was limited and that stability required a clear succession, Nerva made a groundbreaking decision. In AD 97, he adopted Marcus Ulpius Traianus, better known to history as Trajan, as his son and heir. This act was revolutionary in its wisdom. Trajan was a respected general, popular among the legions and renowned for his leadership skills and fairness. By choosing an heir based on merit rather than bloodline, Nerva set a precedent that would transform the imperial system. The adoption signaled a move toward a more meritocratic approach to leadership, paving the way for the so-called era of the Five Good Emperors. Meanwhile, Nerva's domestic policies demonstrated a genuine concern for the welfare of Rome's citizens, particularly the poor and disenfranchised. He initiated the Alimenta program, which provided food, money, and education to orphans and poor children throughout Italy. This early form of social welfare was revolutionary in its intent, aiming to secure the empire's future by investing in its most vulnerable members. Streets once choked with despair began to hum with the cautious optimism of new beginnings. Imagine yourself walking the bustling streets of Rome during Nerva's reign. The grandeur of the Colosseum looms in the distance, its massive arches casting long shadows in the golden light of the afternoon sun. Vendors shout their wares, from fragrant spices to freshly baked bread, while senators, clad in togas, deliberate on laws with renewed vigor. In the shadows of grand temples, ordinary citizens gather, hopeful for peace and prosperity after years of fear. Nerva himself was a humble man, known not for lavish public displays but for his quiet dignity. He avoided excessive pomp and pageantry, preferring intimate gatherings with advisors and thoughtful reflection over grand spectacles. This modesty endeared him to many, presenting a stark contrast to the excesses of previous emperors. His death in January AD 98, after just over 15 months on the throne, was met with widespread mourning. Though brief, Nerva's reign had restored faith in the imperial institution and set Rome on a path towards stability and prosperity. Trajan's smooth succession ensured continuity, and together, their combined legacies shaped one of Rome's greatest golden ages. In reflecting on Nerva's life and reign, one sees a man who understood the fragile nature of power and the importance of compassion and justice. His story reminds us that leadership is not always about grand conquests or dramatic victories, but often about the quiet courage to listen, to heal, and to prepare the way for those who will follow. Trajan, the soldier emperor and builder of empire. With the peaceful passing of Nerva, Rome welcomed Marcus Ulpius Traianus, known simply as Trajan, as its new emperor. Unlike many of his predecessors, Trajan was a man forged in the fires of the battlefield, a soldier whose reputation stretched across the empire. Born in the province of Hispania in AD 53, he was a man far removed from the old Roman aristocracy of the city itself, yet he carried the spirit of Rome in every fiber of his being. The people and Senate hailed Trajan as a hero, the first non-Italian emperor whose origins reflected the vastness of the empire itself. His reign would come to symbolize the height of Roman power and prosperity, a time when the empire stretched to its greatest territorial limits. From the very start, Trajan's leadership was defined by a blend of military genius, administrative skill, and a genuine desire to improve the lives of his people. His military campaigns were bold and sweeping, notably his conquest of Dacia, modern-day Romania, a land rich in gold and other resources coveted by Rome. These wars were brutal and costly but ultimately victorious, bringing immense wealth to the empire and fueling ambitious building projects in the capital. Imagine the roar of Roman legions marching through dense forests and rugged mountains, the crack of spears against shields, the smoke rising from Dacian fortresses taken by storm. Trajan, clad in his general's armor, rode at the front lines, leading with both courage and strategic brilliance. His victories were not merely about conquest but securing Rome's borders, protecting its citizens, and demonstrating the power of Roman civilization. But Trajan was more than a warrior. His vision for Rome extended beyond the battlefield. The city itself became his canvas, and under his reign, it blossomed into a monument of grandeur and innovation. Trajan's Forum, an architectural marvel featuring an enormous basilica, market halls, and the famous Trajan's Column, celebrated his victories in glorious detail. The column, intricately carved with spiraling scenes of the Dacian wars, stands as a testament to the emperor's achievements and the skill of Roman artisans. The Forum was not just a display of imperial pride but a vibrant public space where senators, merchants, and common citizens mingled. The market halls bustled with traders selling goods from across the empire, silks from the east, spices from Arabia, olive oil from Spain, and wines from Gaul. It was a microcosm of the empire's diversity and wealth, a place where the vast Roman world converged. Trajan's concern for the welfare of his people was evident in his social programs. He expanded Nerva's Alimenta scheme, providing food and education to impoverished children, strengthening the social fabric of Italy. Roads were built and maintained, aqueducts repaired, and public baths constructed, improving daily life for millions. His rule was marked by a rare combination of strength and benevolence. Yet the emperor's life was not without challenges. Governing an empire that spanned 3 continents required deft diplomacy and constant vigilance. Rebellions simmered on distant frontiers, and managing the ambitions of powerful generals and senators required a delicate balance of trust and authority. One of the most poignant aspects of Trajan's reign was his relationship with the Senate. Unlike many emperors who saw the Senate as a threat or mere rubber stamp, Trajan worked closely with its members, respecting their role in governance and inviting their counsel. This cooperation strengthened Rome's political stability and fostered a sense of shared purpose. As the years passed, Trajan's legacy became etched into the very stones of Rome and the memories of its people. His death in AD 117 marked the end of an era, but his influence would endure through his adopted son and successor, Hadrian. Imagine walking through the bustling streets of Rome during Trajan's rule, the air filled with the scents of roasting meats, fresh bread, and exotic perfumes brought from distant lands. Citizens gathered in public spaces to hear news from the frontiers, discuss politics, or simply admire the latest monument erected in honor of the emperor. Trajan's reign was a testament to the power of leadership forged through courage, wisdom, and compassion, a reminder that even the greatest empires depend on the strength and humanity of those who guide them. Hadrian, the philosopher emperor and guardian of the empire. As the sun began to set on Trajan's era, a new figure emerged from the shadows of history, Publius Aelius Hadrianus, better known as Hadrian. Unlike his predecessor's fiery conquests and relentless expansion, Hadrian's reign was marked by introspection, wisdom, and a deep desire to consolidate and protect the vast territories Rome had acquired. Hadrian was born in AD 76, also in Hispania, carrying forward the provincial lineage that began with Trajan. From a young age, he showed a keen intellect and an insatiable curiosity about the world around him. Educated by the finest tutors Rome could offer, Hadrian was not just a soldier but a scholar, a lover of arts and philosophy, a man whose mind wandered beyond the dusty battlefields into realms of poetry, architecture, and governance. When Hadrian ascended to the throne in AD 117, the empire was at its greatest territorial extent. Yet this vastness was a double-edged sword. While it symbolized Rome's unmatched power, it also posed immense challenges for governance, security, and cultural cohesion. Hadrian understood this better than most. He realized that to hold an empire together, sometimes it was wiser to build walls than to raise armies. Hadrian's first and most famous act as emperor was to halt the relentless expansion and instead focus on defense and internal strengthening. This shift in policy was not merely pragmatic but philosophical. Hadrian saw Rome not as a sprawling conqueror but as a civilization that needed to cultivate stability and harmony within its borders. Imagine the vast frontiers of the empire, from the windswept moors of Britannia to the sun-baked deserts of Syria, stretching across thousands of miles, guarded by legions stationed in remote forts, watching tirelessly for threats. It was here, far from the marble palaces of Rome, that Hadrian's legacy took physical form. Hadrian's Wall, stretching across northern Britain, was more than a barrier, it was a symbol. It marked the boundary of Rome's reach, a declaration that the empire would defend what it held rather than seek endless conquest. Soldiers patrolled its length, facing the biting cold and storms, standing as the first line of defense against the tribes beyond. The wall was a marvel of engineering, massive stone ramparts, fortified gates, watchtowers at regular intervals, each a testament to Roman ingenuity and discipline. But Hadrian's vision extended beyond military matters. He was a true patron of the arts and architecture. Under his reign, Rome flourished culturally, with grand buildings and temples rising to honor the gods and celebrate the empire's diversity. He rebuilt the Pantheon, enhancing its grandeur, and commissioned the sprawling Villa Adriana near Tivoli, a vast estate that reflected Hadrian's love of Greek culture and his desire for peaceful contemplation. In this villa, with its intricate gardens, pools, and theaters, Hadrian could retreat from the burdens of power and immerse himself in poetry, philosophy, and art. It was here that he entertained poets and philosophers, exchanging ideas that would ripple through Roman culture for generations. Hadrian's reign was also marked by his extensive travels across the empire. Unlike many emperors who ruled from the capital, Hadrian journeyed tirelessly, from the deserts of North Africa to the cities of Asia Minor, inspecting troops, strengthening provincial administration, and forging bonds with local peoples. These travels earned him a reputation as a hands-on leader, deeply connected to the diverse cultures within Rome's vast borders. Yet beneath the surface of this cultured and wise ruler lay the complexities of power. Hadrian's relationship with the Senate was sometimes strained. His centralized control and reforms challenged traditional elites. His personal life, too, bore its share of triumph and tragedy, notably his deep affection for Antinous, a young Greek companion whose untimely death devastated the emperor and led to a cult in his honor. Hadrian's philosophical approach to rulership was both his strength and his challenge. He governed not only with laws and armies but with ideas, believing that an empire's soul depended on justice, culture, and thoughtful stewardship. This vision ensured relative peace and stability during his reign, even as the world around Rome shifted and changed. Imagine walking through the streets of Rome during Hadrian's time, the marble columns gleaming in the sunlight, the chatter of citizens admiring new statues and fountains, the air alive with the scent of incense from temples and the fresh blossoms in imperial gardens. The empire was no longer just a machine of war. It was a living civilization, rich with history and culture, shaped by an emperor who valued wisdom above conquest. Hadrian passed away in AD 138, leaving behind a legacy of balance, between strength and intellect, between expansion and preservation. He had transformed Rome from a restless conqueror into a guardian of heritage, whose walls, temples, and ideas would endure through the ages. As we close this chapter on the great emperors of Rome, we remember not only their victories and monuments but the complexities of leadership, how empires rise and fall, shaped by the hands of those who dare to rule. Antoninus Pius, the peaceful emperor and the architect of stability. As the sun rose slowly over the Roman Empire, casting long shadows across the marble forums and sprawling villas, a new era of calm and prosperity unfolded under the steady hand of Antoninus Pius. Ascending to power in AD 138, following the death of Hadrian, Antoninus was unlike many of his predecessors in one vital way. His reign was marked by peace, an almost unprecedented period where the empire knew little war and much stability. Born Lucius Aelius Aurelius Commodus, but better known by his adopted name Antoninus Pius, this emperor represented the ideal of a ruler who governed not by the sword, but by law, justice, and an unshakable commitment to the welfare of his people. His very name, Pius, reflected his devotion to his family, to the gods, and to the vast and diverse population of Rome. Imagine waking in Rome during Antoninus's reign. The city pulses with quiet energy, the bustle of traders, senators, artisans, and scholars filling the air with sounds both ancient and eternal. The streets are cleaner, the grain shipments arrive on time, and the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer is steady and sure. This was a time when Rome focused inward, tending to the fabric of its society with care. Antoninus's rule was a master class in administration and law. He was known for his fairness and piety, earning the admiration of the Senate and the people alike. Instead of grand military campaigns, his legacy was built upon legal reforms, infrastructure projects, and humanitarian efforts. Under his guidance, the empire's legal system was refined, making justice more accessible to all citizens and even to the many non-Roman inhabitants of the provinces. One of the emperor's greatest achievements was his dedication to public works. Roads, aqueducts, and temples were repaired and constructed, weaving the empire closer together physically and symbolically. His reign saw a flourishing of Roman engineering, ensuring that the empire's lifeblood, the flow of goods, water, and information, continued without interruption. The famous Antonine Wall in Britain, though smaller and less imposing than Hadrian's Wall, symbolized Rome's protective but peaceful stance at the northern frontier. Antoninus was also deeply concerned with the well-being of Rome's less fortunate. He instituted welfare programs, providing grain distributions to the poor and improving conditions in orphanages and hospitals. His reign was marked by a paternalistic care for all subjects, a genuine belief that the emperor should be a guardian and protector, not a tyrant. Yet Antoninus's peace was not a sign of weakness. Far from it. He maintained a strong and loyal military, disciplined and ready, though rarely called to battle. His strategic genius lay in deterrence, keeping the borders secure through strength and diplomacy, rather than through constant war. This approach preserved Roman lives and treasure, allowing the empire to prosper internally. The emperor's personal life reflected the calm and dignity of his rule. Married to Faustina the Elder, Antoninus was a devoted husband and father, qualities that endeared him further to the Roman populace. Their children were raised with the same values of duty and honor, ensuring that the imperial family remained a symbol of stability and continuity. As the years passed, Antoninus's reign became a golden age of peace. Trade flourished, art and literature blossomed, and Rome's diverse cultures coexisted under the umbrella of law and order. Scholars and philosophers debated in the forums, poets composed verses celebrating the empire's virtues, and ordinary citizens went about their daily lives with a renewed sense of security. However, this peaceful era was not without its challenges. Natural disasters, localized rebellions, and political intrigues tested Antoninus's resolve. But time and again, through wisdom and measured action, he steered the empire away from turmoil. His leadership style emphasized collaboration and respect for tradition, fostering unity across the vast provinces. The emperor's later years were marked by reflection and preparation for the future. He adopted Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus as his heirs, ensuring that the empire would continue under leaders who valued philosophy and governance as much as power. Antoninus Pius died peacefully in AD 161, leaving behind a legacy of serenity and strength. Picture now the Roman Empire at dusk under Antoninus's rule, quiet streets illuminated by flickering oil lamps, citizens gathered in warm homes sharing stories of a time when Rome thrived in peace, protected by an emperor who ruled with a just and steady hand. His reign was a testament to the power of calm leadership in a world too often torn by conflict. As we move forward in our story of Rome's great emperors, remember that not all greatness is forged in the heat of battle. Sometimes it is found in the gentle strength of peace and the patient weaving of stability, qualities that Antoninus Pius embodied fully. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor and Stoic sage. As dawn breaks over the sprawling city of Rome and the mighty Tiber River glistens beneath the golden light, the figure of Marcus Aurelius emerges, not just as an emperor, but as a thinker, a philosopher, a man burdened with the weight of the world yet striving for wisdom and virtue. Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus, often called the last of the five good emperors, ruled from AD 161 to 180, leaving behind a legacy unlike any other, a legacy of stoicism, duty, and profound introspection. Imagine walking through the grand marble halls of the imperial palace alongside Marcus. You see a man cloaked not in the arrogance of power but in quiet contemplation. His eyes, sharp and thoughtful, scan scrolls and manuscripts. His fingers lightly stroke the leather-bound pages as he seeks answers not only for ruling an empire but for mastering himself. Marcus was born into privilege, but never allowed his status to cloud his judgment or humility. His reign was marked by relentless challenges, wars on the empire's northern frontiers, plagues that devastated the population, and political strife that tested his resolve. Yet through every storm, Marcus remained steadfast, embodying the Stoic philosophy that he practiced daily. Stoicism, the belief that virtue, reason, and self-control are the paths to true happiness, guided every decision Marcus made. In his private writings, which we now know as meditations, he wrestled with human nature, fate, and the responsibilities of leadership. These reflections, penned in the solitude of military camps and imperial chambers alike, reveal a ruler deeply aware of his flaws, yet determined to be just and wise. Visualize a camp on the Danube frontier, where Marcus commands legions against the Germanic tribes. The air is thick with tension, the clang of armor mingling with the murmur of soldiers. Yet, even amidst battle plans and military orders, Marcus finds moments to retreat into thought, reminding himself, and his commanders, that true strength lies not only in force of arms but in the discipline of the mind. Unlike many emperors who sought glory through conquest alone, Marcus's victories were often internal. He battled his own doubts, fears, and the temptations of power. His governance balanced military necessity with efforts to improve justice and care for the empire's people. Marcus extended legal protections, supported education, and sought to reduce corruption. His partnership with Lucius Verus, his co-emperor, reflected a unique blend of friendship and shared duty, though it was Marcus who bore the greater burden. When the Antonine plague swept through the empire, claiming thousands, Marcus faced the crisis with resilience and compassion, comforting the afflicted and ensuring the continuation of vital services. Marcus Aurelius was more than a general or a ruler. He was a philosopher king in the truest sense. His meditations speak directly to us across the centuries, offering timeless wisdom about human nature, suffering, and the pursuit of the good life. He taught that while we cannot control external events, we can control our reactions, our judgments, and our will. Picture the evening light fading over Rome, as Marcus sits quietly by a flickering oil lamp, writing by hand in his journal. Outside, the city hums with life. Citizens debate philosophy in the forums, children play in the streets, and distant bells toll for the gods. In this moment, the emperor is not just a ruler of men but a seeker of truth. Yet, Marcus's reign was not without sorrow. The constant wars drained the treasury and manpower, and his beloved son Commodus, whom he had hoped would continue his legacy of wisdom, would prove a different kind of ruler, one whose excesses and failures eventually contributed to the empire's decline. Marcus Aurelius died in AD 180, far from the marble grandeur of Rome, in the military camp at Vindobona, modern-day Vienna. His death marked the end of the Pax Romana, the long peace that had allowed Rome to flourish. But his ideas endured, influencing not just Rome but the very foundation of Western thought. As you listen, imagine standing at the crossroads of history, watching this philosopher-emperor govern not just with power, but with heart and mind intertwined. His story reminds us that true leadership is as much about mastering oneself as it is about ruling others. Commodus, the emperor who changed the course of Rome. As the sun rises over the eternal city, its golden rays casting long shadows across the ancient stone of the Forum and the Colosseum, a new chapter unfolds, one of decadence, turmoil, and the complex legacy of Marcus Aurelius' son, Commodus. Born Lucius Aurelius Commodus in AD 161, he inherited the empire from his father in AD 180, stepping onto the throne amid the expectations of greatness, but soon carving a path marked by excess, controversy, and a reign that would forever alter the fate of Rome. Imagine the young Commodus growing up under the stern yet loving eye of his philosopher father. His early life was filled with lessons in rhetoric, philosophy, and governance, yet even as a child, there were signs of a restless spirit, a hunger not just for power but for glory in the gladiatorial arenas. Unlike Marcus, who valued stoicism and reason, Commodus was drawn to spectacle, to the adulation of the crowds, and to the intoxicating allure of personal fame. Upon ascending to the throne at the age of 19, Commodus wasted no time in stamping his personality onto the empire. He abandoned the modesty and restraint of his predecessors and embraced a reign of flamboyance and self-indulgence. The emperor was often seen parading through Rome dressed as Hercules, adorned with a lion's skin and wielding a club, blending myth with reality in a way that captivated yet disturbed the Roman people. Visualize the vast arenas of Rome filled with cheering crowds, the air thick with dust and anticipation. There, in the Colosseum, Commodus participated as a gladiator, something unthinkable for an emperor before him. He fought wild beasts and gladiators alike, staging bouts where his victory was guaranteed, his enemies mere props in his theatrical display of strength. The emperor's obsession with gladiatorial combat was both his greatest vanity and a symbol of the empire's shifting values, where spectacle began to overshadow statesmanship. But beneath the surface of this public persona lay darker currents. Commodus' reign saw a rise in political purges, conspiracies, and fear. Trusted advisors were executed or exiled on suspicion of disloyalty. The Senate, once a powerful body, was reduced to a mere rubber stamp for the emperor's whims. Rome's vast bureaucracy suffered under corruption, as Commodus favored sycophants and personal allies over competent administrators. Economic difficulties compounded the empire's troubles. Commodus inherited a realm weakened by years of war and plague, yet his lavish spending on games, palaces, and personal luxuries drained the treasury. Taxes rose, burdens grew heavier on the common people, and the foundations of Roman prosperity began to crumble. Despite this, Commodus projected an image of invincibility and divine favor. Coins minted in his likeness portrayed him not merely as emperor but as a god, melding the earthly with the divine in a manner designed to intimidate and awe. Statues of Commodus Hercules were erected across the city, his presence ubiquitous. Yet, the excesses of Commodus sowed seeds of dissent. Senators and generals alike grew weary of his erratic behavior and reckless decisions. Plots to overthrow him began to circulate in the shadows of the Palatine Hill. Among those plotting was his own mistress, Marcia, whose betrayal would seal the emperor's fate. Imagine the tension in the imperial palace, halls once filled with philosophical debate now echoing with whispers of conspiracy. On a fateful night in December AD 192, Commodus was strangled in his bath by a wrestler named Narcissus, an act orchestrated by those closest to him who believed the empire could no longer endure his rule. His death ended the Nerva-Antonine dynasty and plunged Rome into chaos, a period known as the Year of the Five Emperors. The empire teetered on the brink, as rival generals and politicians vied for control, ushering in a time of civil war, instability, and eventual transformation. Yet, Commodus' story remains a cautionary tale of power's corruption and the fragile line between greatness and ruin. He was a man shaped by his father's shadow, unable or unwilling to live up to that legacy, choosing spectacle over substance, fear over wisdom. As you listen, picture the grand city of Rome at a crossroads, its future uncertain, its people divided, and its emperor both idolized and despised. Commodus' reign is a vivid reminder that the fate of an empire often rests not only on armies and borders but on the character of those who hold its highest offices. The fall of an era and the enduring legacy of Rome. As the sun set over the marble spires and vast forums of Rome, a profound silence seemed to settle upon the city, a silence heavy with both sorrow and reflection. The reign of Commodus, marked by excess and instability, had ended, leaving the empire weary and uncertain. His death was not merely the passing of a man but the closing of an era, one that had witnessed the greatest flourishing of Roman power, culture, and influence. Imagine walking through the ancient streets of Rome at this pivotal moment. The cobblestones beneath your feet echoed the footsteps of senators, soldiers, and citizens alike, each grappling with the new reality that the unshakable empire might be more fragile than it appeared. The air is thick with anticipation and apprehension. Markets buzz with rumors. Philosophers debate in shaded porticos. Mothers clutch their children tighter, wondering what tomorrow will bring. The year of the 5 emperors unfolds like a dark storm on the horizon. Military generals, once loyal protectors of the empire, now clash in a ruthless bid for power. Civil war threatens to unravel the very fabric of Roman society. Yet amid this chaos, seeds of renewal are sown. From the turmoil emerge leaders who seek to restore order, reform governance, and rekindle the spirit of Rome. But beyond the political upheavals lies the enduring legacy of Rome itself. The monumental architecture, the towering Colosseum, the sprawling baths of Caracalla, the grandeur of the Pantheon, stands testament to the genius and ambition of generations. The intricate network of roads and aqueducts, engineering marvels in their own right, continue to link distant provinces, fostering trade, cultural exchange, and military might. Roman law, philosophy, and culture had long transcended the city's walls. Latin, the language of emperors and poets, echoed across continents. The ideals of citizenship, justice, and civic duty, born in the Roman Republic and nurtured through the empire, laid foundations that would shape the Western world for millennia. Even in decline, Rome remained a beacon of civilization and innovation. As we reach the conclusion of our journey through the lives and reigns of Rome's greatest emperors, each a complex figure embodying ambition, wisdom, flaws, and tragedy, we are reminded that history is not a simple tale of heroes and villains. It is a rich tapestry woven from countless lives and choices, triumphs and failures. The story of Rome teaches us about the power and peril of leadership, the resilience of culture, and the impermanence of even the mightiest empires. Dear listener, it has been an honor to walk with you through this remarkable saga, to breathe life into the stones and stories of an empire that once ruled the world. Now I invite you to become part of this living dialogue. Where in the world are you tuning in from? What time graces your day or night as you listen? Your comments enrich this community and inspire future explorations. If this tale of Rome's glory and decline has captivated your imagination, please take a moment to subscribe for more immersive journeys into history's most fascinating epochs. Show your support by liking the video and sharing it with others who cherish stories from the past. And above all, leave your thoughts below. Your voice completes the story. So now, make yourself comfortable. Whether you are nestled beside a softly glowing fireplace, feeling the gentle hum of a fan on a warm evening, or wrapped in a cozy blanket in a quiet room, let the echoes of Rome's past fill your mind and soul. Let history awaken your curiosity, challenge your perspectives, and remind you of the enduring human spirit. Thank you for sharing this voyage with me. Until our next adventure, may the lessons and legends of Rome inspire you, and may you always carry a piece of its eternal flame in your heart. Veil, amici. Farewell, friends. Until we meet again.